Tax season 2019 is officially underway, and taxpayers who use SARS's eFiling and MobiApp can now file their income tax returns, and they have until the 4th of December 2019 to do so. And taxpayers who want to file their income tax returns at a SARS branch, they can do so from the 1st of August until the 31st of October this year. So we have some questions as to, why the shorter period going to branches, and also clarity on certain other issues like, for example, the threshold. I'm joined in studio now by the Commissioner of the South African Revenue Service, Edward Kieswetter. Thanks so much for coming through.
Good morning, Sakina. Nice to be with you.
So it's exactly 2 months. You started on the 1st of May, which was, of course, a public holiday. So if we say officially on the 2nd of May to the 2nd of July today, it's exactly 2 months. How's it been?
I actually did work on the 1st of May, but that's another story. It feels like 2 years. It's been rough. On the one hand, quite exciting to be back in a place that I loved and was an integral part of. On the other hand, to see firsthand and to experience firsthand the damage that was done at SARS since 2014, as the Nugent report correctly points out, the hollowing out of capability and capacity, a massive failure in governance, many good people who had left or been marginalized, and many of the capabilities that we had built up being dismantled. And then really throughout the organization to experience the extent of pain and trauma that the organization had endured is going to take many, many months, if not years, to address and turn around.
Let's just talk about that for a moment before we get into the issues of tax filing season. The hollowing out of the institution, as you put it, the Nugent Commission also pointed to governance failures at SARS. So what has been your experience over these 2 months in terms of some of the more practical things that you've noticed that have perhaps scuppered, the collection of revenue in past years?
So let me share with you firstly. So one of the things that was done was a so-called operating model review by a company called Bain, which quite frankly, by all our estimation, was really not done because it had a solid business case. The operating model that SARS followed was based on international best practice, and it was about refining it, not dismantling it. And that triggered a whole lot of the implications for staff. So let me share with you some of the stories. About 60 senior executives, capable people with deep SARS experience, were displaced. They were taken out of their roles and positions, and they were moved into non-jobs or irrelevant work. In the last 2 months, I've had to meet with most of them on a one-by-one basis, understand where they're at, and reassign them to meaningful work. Bring them back to do work. They are senior people, well-paid people. It's silly not to use them. We've also had many people who had left the organization. So I've begun to reach out on a one-on-one basis to try and see some of those people would be happy to come back, and on a case-by-case basis to review that. We've also had many of the organizational capabilities like the large business center, a focus on the illicit economy, on internal compliance and integrity. All of that was displaced. So we have a process where we have re-established many of that capability, and now it's about building it up, upskilling it and retooling it for that work. So it's been a systematic, very deliberate attempt to disintermediate people who were against the state capture project and to insert people who would do the bidding of those who had an intention that could no otherwise be described as corrupt.
How much do you think, do you have any sort of estimate as to how much that activity cost the Revenue Collection Service?
Well, we've seen the decline in revenue last year, where the minister had to consistently revise downwards the revenue estimate. It's difficult to put a full number on it, but it runs into tens of billions of rands. And within a struggling economy such as we have now, if we don't have the capability to effectively execute our mandate, you can see how it becomes a challenge for us. And so the hard work, SARS, if I can move towards the tax season, SARS's work is built on three principles that produces an environment of high tax morality, public trust, and voluntary compliance. So how do we achieve voluntary compliance? We have to do three things very well, and then revenue is the outcome. The first thing is we have to ensure that the public is aware of their obligation, and so our outreach, our education, giving clarity and certainty as an important part of our work. The second principle and work that we have to do well is we have to ensure that those honest taxpayers, and by the way, we think that most people are honest, that those honest taxpayers find it easy, hassle-free, to fulfill their obligation, and I'll come to what we are doing this particular year. And the third and very important thing that we have to do well is we have to ensure that those dishonest taxpayers who want to defraud the fiscus, and I can talk about that also in a minute, that it's hard for them to do so and easier for us to detect them and hold them to account. Those are the three things we must do well.
Okay, let's start with the last one. In terms of compliance and those who have found ways or continually try to find ways to actually subvert the system. So you also spoke about, the illicit economy and 10 billion rand in tobacco excise revenue that you see as low-hanging fruit for SARS to collect on. So let's talk about that. How are you going to deal with those systems?
So let me tell you the root cause behind a lot of this behavior. When taxpayers feel that the Revenue Authority has no integrity, no moral authority, they lose trust. They then feel morally justified to try and manipulate their taxes because, let's be just honest here. For most people, paying taxes, they would rather spend it on a holiday or do other things, right? So it may be a grudge purchase. Well, unless, of course, you are like you and I, we are committed South Africans. We understand that the revenues that we collect on behalf of government enables government to build a capable democracy, which then provides for us a place of belonging, a place that gives us a social dividend. So I think we also have to move on from it being a grudge purchase to being a contribution towards our democracy. But when the public loses confidence and feel morally justified to manipulate it, you have all kinds of behavior. So what have we seen? Firstly, we've seen many more people not submitting their returns, or they have previous years that they haven't submitted. We see taxpayers fiddling with their income and their expenses, either not including all their income so that they can underdeclare, or fabricating expenses so that they can claim deductions and therefore minimize their tax obligation. We see tax preparers who are supposed to help people prepare their tax unwittingly promising taxpayers, I can arrange a refund for you, and then also fiddling with the numbers. And so what I can tell you is through the diligent work that is done, last year we prevented over 8 billion rand of refund from going out fraudulently because of the work that is done. We also had to prosecute and criminally convict taxpayers for doing that, because any of those offences are in fact not just negligence, but they actually are criminal. Because our tax obligation is vests in law. On the hard criminal end, you mentioned the tobacco industry, but it's not just the tobacco industry. We see all kinds of fraudulent behavior with exporters and importers. So why would someone manipulate that? Well, if you overstate the value and the nature of goods that you export, you're able to claim a VAT refund that's not due to you. And so a very important risk that we need to be aware of. If you importing, you under-disclose the value, or the nature of that goods so that you can minimize your customs duty that you have to pay. And so that is the capability and the focus areas for this year and going into the future, to try and ensure that the tax system has a higher level of integrity, and we ensure in a difficult economic environment that the monies that are due, in fact, are collected.
So what about the perception that SARS tends to be harder on the smaller person, who has less to pay to SARS than they are on the bigger tax evaders who owe millions and even billions to SARS? Well, how do you address that perception?
Sakina, I don't believe that that is true, because there's no value, no benefit. In any case, if there's any incentive, we should be pursuing the compliance behavior of large corporates and wealthy individuals, because they present us with a significantly bigger opportunity, but also a significantly bigger risk. Large corporates and wealthy individuals have the resources to employ expensive advice providers to arrange their affairs in complicated ways, to try and mask incomes and expenditure and minimize their taxes. Now, whilst the law provides you to manage your affairs efficiently, which is avoiding paying unnecessary taxes, the law does not provide for evasion, which is willfully and unlawfully manipulating your affairs. And so we are even-handed across the spectrum in order to ensure that from the entry-level worker to the wealthy individuals and large companies pay their fair share of taxes.
Let's talk about the entry level, and the threshold has been raised by SARS from 350 to 500,000 rand. So let's just explain, very simply to people who does not need to fill out a tax return.
Well, so the reason we've done that is, again, to make it simpler. SARS collects an enormous amount of data from every one of the taxpayers. For salaried workers, your employer deducts your pay as you earn. So we get that information from your employer. We get financial statements from your bank. We get from insurers providers. We get the deductions that you had paid. If you bought a retirement annuity or you have medical expenses, all of that information we're able to bring into our data set. We also correlate our register with other registers, like the deeds office, the company's register, the population register, and increasingly expanding that data set. Now, on that, we then also impose sophisticated risk rules that we can profile, identify, and seamlessly assess taxpayers whose affairs are relatively simple. And therefore we say, if you have the following criteria, you don't have to submit a return. One, if you earn below 500,000 Rand a year from a single employer, in other words, you don't have multiple streams of income, you have no other form of income from rental income or investment income or commission or other related incomes. Thirdly, that you have no additional expenses that you need to claim, like medical or otherwise. If you have, your profile is a standard profile, we already have all the information we need to assess your tax status and to reconcile your affair for last year. What we will do for those category of taxpayers below 500,000 Rand, we then say, you don't have to submit a return. We will send you an SMS or an email, given your preferred channel of communication, and you will then receive a message from us that says, this is, if you had to submit a return, this is the outcome. If you agree with this outcome, just say yes, and it's done. So it couldn't be any simpler for that category of taxpayers. For those who are still relatively straightforward and standard salary structure, but above 500,000, we invite them to either e-file or to use the MobiApp. I hope you've already downloaded the MobiApp, Sakina. It really is so easy. You go into the Apple Store or the Google Store, you download the app. If you are a registered taxpayer, You register as a user on the application, and using the app, you can download your profile. SARS will then present your return to you already filled in. If you agree with it, you can simulate the outcome. There's a tax calculator. If you need to upload additional documents for us, like a retirement annuity or a medical certificate, you can attach it. If you don't have a soft copy, you can take a photo quickly of it and attach it. So it's really easy, it's intuitive. And we live in a world where young people, they live their life through apps. And so in a technology-driven world, it makes sense that we also don't just talk about the fourth industrial revolution, but that we live it. And so I hope, and we're encouraging more and more taxpayers to move from the manual filing to the online filing. And there's a logic behind that. If we can divert and convince and convert more taxpayers to use the online filing, it frees up the office capacity for those people, sometimes the older people or those who still are a little bit technology averse, who insist on coming to the office, or those who have more complex affairs who come to the office. We can then give them a better service. We've also shortened the window for the manual submission in our branches, both in terms of the start and end date from the 1st of August to the 31st of October. And we've given a wider window of opportunity for those who choose to use the online filing. So what we'd say now, as from yesterday, even if you're a manual filer, if you come to the branch as we usually do, then we invite you to come to our branch now, then we'll convert you to an online filer. After the 31st of October until the 4th of December, we will also use that period to convert you to an online filer. So the benefit of that, just gives you a seamless service. Behind the scene, we are able to assess you very quickly because of the information we have. But importantly, we're also able to detect any attempts to try and fiddle the system to create a refund because of the risk modeling work we do behind the scenes using the data that we have.
So just to be clear, under 500,000 Rand per annum, you don't have to submit a return, and SARS, you will pick it up and you will send a message via whatever preferred. But how do people indicate what their preferred method of communication is?
So if you don't, we will send you an SMS if you have your phone, or if we have your email address, we'll send you an email message.
And is there any possibility that you may miss someone? And in the event that happens, what do they do? Do they then need to get in touch with SARS?
So we have created the facility for employers to register every one of their prospective or existing employers as taxpayers. In fact, taxpayers do not have to come to SARS to register as a taxpayer. And so once they are registered and the employees submit that information to us, then you are in our universe. So we shouldn't miss you. We will only miss you if you've not been registered as a taxpayer. And that is an obligation, obviously. And I want to use the opportunity to appeal to employers to also comply in that regard, to register their employees, to deduct the pay-as-you-earn, to submit it to SARS timeously and honestly. And that strengthens the integrity of the system. So we do rely on third parties like employers, providers of data, third-party data, and also tax practitioners and tax preparers. The entire system must have integrity for you to experience a seamless and effortless experience this filing season.
Well, looking forward to it, and hopefully I'll get paid first this year. We'll see. I'm definitely going to download the app. So thank you so much to the Commissioner of the South African Revenue Service, Edward Kieswetter, giving us some clarity on a tax season 2019. So if you have any questions, do send them. We'll try and bring either Mr. Kieswetter or someone else back regarding the questions that you may raise with us later on. Right now, though, time for the news at 8.